Okay, so we're going to cover X-Men number 18. And the reason why, because it does answer one particular question. How will Laura Kinney feel with the idea that there is another version of her on the island of Krakoa? Yes, you heard that right. We now have two Laura Kinneys. Because remember, when it came to our previous X-Men storyline, when it came to Forge, he went into the vault, the home of the children of the vault. Now, this was a follow-up to an earlier story that was done by Jonathan Hickman, where Synch, Wolverine, Laura Kinney Wolverine, and also Darwin went inside the vault to learn more about the children of the vault. Now, when it comes to the vault, time moves differently. So 1 minute in our world could be 500 years in their world. Now, with that being said, because our three characters did spend a lot of time with one another, well, Synch and Wolverine fell in love. Now, at the end of their mission, Synch was able to get out of the vault, but Wolverine and Darwin were not. Now, originally, we were left to believe that Wolverine died, but she did not, because in our last video, we found out she did survive, and so you have Forge bring her back to the rest of the mutant race, back to Synch. Here's the problem though, because when we thought she had died, so did the X-Men. And so thanks to the Five, they were able to make another Laura Kinney because they believed the original one had died. But now we know she did not die. And so on the island of Krakoa, you now have two Laura Kinneys. One who is 500 years old and the other one who's like, well, I guess 20 or 30 years old. Either way, the question is, how can the two characters actually work together? So as we dive into today's video, we pick up with the original Laura Kinney telling her boyfriend Synch she wants to meet up with her younger self to kind of have an understanding that both of them are going to stay no matter what, and both of them are going to stay out of each other's ways no matter what. The problem is though, when they do find the younger Laura Kinney, well, she's with her new team, better known as the X-Terminators. And we just covered their storyline, and their storyline is wild. But basically, they're now a team full of vampire hunters. They're going around hunting vampires left and right to help out the mutants, but to also help out Dracula. But at the same time, you have the younger Laura realize, oh look, there goes my older self who fell in love with Synch, and now they're a couple again, but I guess she wants to talk to me while I'm in the middle of a mission. Great. Now, Laura Kinney, the younger Laura Kinney, is not alone. She is with the rest of the X-Terminators, so Jubilee and also Dazzler. I want to say Boom Boom as well. Either way, you do have the rest of them realize, oh my gosh, we have two Laura Kinneys. One is old and one is young. This makes for a very interesting kind of thing. Now, when it comes to the X-Terminators, they're on a certain mission right now where they're trying to kill off a huge vampire nest in this area. And so you do have both Synch and future Laura Kinney decide to help out the X-Terminators get rid of the vampire nest. Now, while doing that, you did have our heroes being able to work together to fight against a wave of vampires. But then it's time for them to go deeper into the vampire nest and kill off the rest of the vampires. Except you do have both our Laura Kinneys tell X-Terminators and Synch they want to do the rest of the mission by themselves, so that they're able to talk to each other, but at the same time still kill some vampires. But then we pick up with the rest of the X-Men team, and right now they're on a mission to help out some members of Orchid not die in space. Now remember, when it comes to Orchid, they were the newest organization that was put together by Jonathan Hickman to be another group to go after the mutant race. Now, when it comes to Orchid, they are a tad bit different than your other groups. And what I mean by that is they're basically made up of members of other groups who had came together and said, it's time for us to kill off the mutants. So some of their members came from Hydra or AIM or even SHIELD. but they all agreed on one thing. It's time to get rid of the mutant race. And so over the last couple years, they have been the main bad guys for the X-Men. Either way, when it comes to our heroes, they realize that some members of that group were about to die in space. And so you do have the X-Men go out of their way to save their people, but at the same time, it's them saying, listen, even though you hate us, you're now going to think about us until you actually die. Because now you realize that mutants went out of their way to save your life, even though you hate us with a passion. And I hope you do appreciate us saving your butts from dying out here in space. But getting back over to our two Laura Kinneys, you do have the two of them work together to fight against the army of vampires in this particular area. And really, it's just the two of them agreeing on a few things like, listen, I'm not here to take over your life and you're not here to take over my life. But on top of that, we are going to stay away from each other. We are never going to hang out. We are never going to be friends. We can never go to each other for advice. But at the same time, we are not going to try to kill each other. We are going our own separate lives away from each other. And so you do have the two of them agree on that. And matter of fact, they go ahead and kill off the rest of the vampires in this vampire nest. But that kind of shows that even though there's now two of them, they're going to live their separate lives. But at the same time, it seems like the X-Men still get their Wolverine once again, because this older Laura Kinney is with Sync. And of course, that means she has to be part of the new X-Men team. But then we have to jump over to Jean Grey. And the reason why, because you have Jean Grey meeting up with the members of the Quiet Council. And the reason why, because when it comes to some people on the Quiet Council, they feel like when it comes to, well, the older Laura Kinney, having her still be alive is a bad idea. That technically she should go ahead and be killed off right now. Except you have Jean Grey say no. And the reason why, because Jean Grey read the mind of the older Laura Kinney and realized that she is a good person, that she is legit. And so Jean Grey is saying, I'm going to clear her and let her be on future X-Men missions. Now, when it comes to Beast, he feels like it is a bad idea. At the same time though, you have Jean Grey say, you can't say anything because you have a lot of people right now who don't trust you. And so why should I care if you don't trust somebody at all? Now, with that being said, you do have Beast mention that when it came to the X-Men saving those members of Orchid earlier, that was a mistake. But you have Jean Grey say, no, that was not a mistake at all. Because now they realize that even though they hate us, the mutants are still going to try their best to help them no matter what. Except that is the moment where we do have to jump over to Corsair. Now remember, when it comes to Corsair, he is the father to Scott Summers, Alex Summers, and Gabriel Summers. Now it'll be Cyclops, Havoc, and Vulcan. Either way, when it comes to Corsair, he's right now sending out a message telling his boys that he may not make it to this Sunday's dinner, that apparently he is going to die, but he's trying his best to hold back an enemy that is trying to make their way towards Earth. And this is going to lead into a later story arc we're going to cover, because we kind of find out that Corsair and his fellow Starjammers, they have been killed off, or at least taken over by the Brood. And when it comes to the Brood, they have a long running with the X-Men, which means that the next story arc could be a big one. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.